So as I said earlier, my name's Ross Hitchenor. I'm from Marketwire, and many of you may actually know us as Sysomos, which is the brand which operates in the social research and monitoring sphere. So unfortunately, like some of the people on the panel, I do need to give you a little bit of background about the company, because you probably don't, or may well not have heard of us before. So we're a social communications company. We've, as you can probably see up there on the slide, tripled our client base in the last 5 years, and can now count amongst those 70% of the Fortune top 50. The things that our clients really say about why they love us are the powerful solutions which are really easy to use, and that sort of coupled together with our customer service, they say sets us apart from certain other people behind us. So this is a quick overview of the different product groups, because as I said in the introduction, we do social media monitoring. We also do social media research and analysis, which I know the kind folks at Greenlight use quite extensively. But beyond that, we also have distribution functions. So we're one of the largest wire companies in the world, meaning that people put out news obviously for PR purposes, but also for SEO purposes. And then recently we launched a platform called Resonate, which is I'm going to have to get this one right, it's a new product. It's a intelligent collaboration, deployment and analysis platform, which is not yet available in the UK, which is why I haven't quite mastered the blurb on that one yet. So I have to admit, I'm not an expert on Christmas marketing, so I was a bit slightly stumped when I was asked to come and talk about Christmas marketing to everyone. So I thought, really, well, how can we help you with your Christmas marketing? What sort of things could we try to understand, or what sort of things could you try to understand? So I picked out a couple of those products from the previous slide, which are relevant for doing that. And the first of those would be our product Map, which is a research and insights tool, which is quite different to most of the other monitoring tools out there, insofar as it allows you to do long-term trending, to do sort of ad hoc research, not only on specific brands, but also around entire markets, which I'll come and talk a bit more about in a sec. Obviously, we've also got the distribution elements, and then we've got a more perhaps sort of traditional social media monitoring, if such a thing exists already, which is around tracking of brands, things like workflow, engagement, alerts for sort of PR purposes, that type of thing. So actually, can I go back? There we go. So I thought, well, let's ask a few questions about the sort of things which you're going to be asking yourselves. I also must add, I went off and canvassed as many clients as I could to try and understand a bit more about Christmas marketing. When do retail brands typically start their planning, etc.? And what I found across different sectors are that there are wildly different time frames. So I had sort of people right from sort of 9 months, people in fashion sort of working perhaps, I'm guessing you two at the back there working fashion perhaps. I'm looking at you, perhaps sort of starting 2 or 3 seasons ahead of that, and then sort of right up to some of the people I was chatting to earlier, where they're just sort of doing it perhaps just 3 months ahead. So first of all, I thought, well obviously the most sensible place to start would be really at looking what happened last year. So we could start looking at some sort of quantitative stats, benchmarking us versus key competitors, and then obviously from there you can also then start to perhaps sort of drill in and look at what are people actually saying about us, or perhaps some of our products versus some of the competitive products out there. So you can do that obviously either by looking at sort of individual posts, or you can use sort of text analytics to understand on a broader scale what topics are people talking about regularly, and that's something which we and obviously some of our competitors also offer. So beyond that, then you've got to start thinking about sort of different groups of people, different departments, and obviously I'm imagining probably a lot of you will use agencies for coming up with creative ideas, but maybe you do that in-house. And then, so again, we could be looking into sort of individual posts if we wanted to in here. But I think one of the things which people really again say they particularly like about our platforms are that you don't actually just need to be tracking your own products or your own industry. You can actually look at the entire industry as a whole. So up here on my slide I've got some various sort of tea brands. I don't know if you've got any tea brands in the house. And it is interesting obviously to see what consumers are saying about your brand or your competitors. But actually in terms of sort of creative ideas and ideas for marketing campaigns, it's often more useful to look at what people are saying about tea, because that can create that engagement, that hook within the marketing message which you're putting out there, which really gets people to buy into that campaign and actually drive sort of things around engagement. So I also took a couple of, I don't know how many sort of people we've got here internationally, but I took a couple of brands. So we've got John Lewis and, I don't know if they're exact correlation, but Macy's over in North America. And I took a look back at some of the stats. So we're looking at, you can see up there the quantitative stats leading up to Christmas last year. And then we can quite clearly see a launch of 2 TV campaigns in there. And obviously the John Lewis campaign excuse me, was one of the most widely talked about TV campaigns last year. I think partially because people were wondering what was in the box, so sort of things around dead dogs and heads and all sorts of things like that. And then, so I thought I'd then compare that around the Macy's campaign, which probably most of you haven't seen, but that was all a campaign sort of delivered around the phrase "believe," and that had, unsurprisingly, that had Justin Bieber popping up as a short spot, and obviously we can see there that the traffic went through the roof for that. You perhaps can't see from the back of the room, but the axes are actually different, like, as we would expect across sort of North America and the UK. So Macy's did generate a lot more traffic whilst that aired, but what we can see for both of those actually are that there's quite a sharp drop-off, even for that John Lewis advert, where it actually drove quite a sort of considerable amount of conversation and people were discussing it. So obviously using social, it's quite a well-used example, but what we're really trying to do is trying to either prolong that drop-off or extend that curve, or if you're putting out multiple creatives, try to fill those gaps in between those sort of peaks and troughs. And what we, a way in which I work with sort of several large global brands is around actually merging multiple data sources. And I know this is something which obviously the guys from Hydra are doing with relations to SEO, but I work with other companies as well, and they actually are pulling in multiple data streams. So we're putting in SEO, we're putting in marketing data, and obviously, of course, they're also able to correlate that with sales data, so that then we're presenting that data which their board can see, and they can see that if they increase their marketing spend by X, this has an increase in social of Y, and that then ultimately leads to more sales, and they can start to correlate that and really derive some real ROI from the various strands of the business. And this is my Alan Partridge slide, as a colleague said to me when I showed him this. How do you track and react to campaign reaction? Strange enough, you could buy our products or some of the other products up on the board on the panel here. But the reason I really wanted to put this up here is actually around the factor that whilst you're monitoring products, you're able to, and perhaps monitoring those campaigns, you can actually, by using products such as ourselves, Marketwire, Brandwatch, etc., you're able to capture that data in real time and react in real time. And I work with, for instance, a large film producer where they monitor all of their film releases as they're going out. And one of the films which they launched a while ago, I would love it to have been a Christmas-related film, but unfortunately it's not for the purpose of this presentation. And they were tracking it, and it was an action film, and it was really they focused all their marketing efforts around male media, and they saw actually that the male lead they hadn't previously thought was particularly hunky, but there was quite a large percentage of women commenting on the fact that they'd like to go and watch this film. And presumably, or they could actually tell, seeing in the comments, that it was around this actor. So what they were then able to do is switch that media spend dynamically to female-focused media, and actually through tracking the the audience levels, etc., research groups, they were able to see quite a large increase in the overall number of sales around that film. So, having talked about campaigns, I was thinking, well, actually, that's all a bit last decade. So perhaps these are some questions which we can use, sort of discuss on the panel afterwards. But how about sort of campaign-led activity? And also, if you don't have campaigns, how can you create those campaigns? How can you tap into what perhaps pre-existing campaigns were already saying around topics? And then my final slide, because Simon said he'd probably put me on the spot on the panel, was he said he was going to ask me what the #1 toy for Christmas would be this year. So fortunately for me, Hamleys put out a press release earlier this week, and so this was their predictions, and I'm slightly loath to go against them, but having researched this using our tools, and actually it must be said, I wasn't aware previously of the large forums who constantly discuss Subbuteo. So having excluded quite a few of those forums, I'm not sure whether that's scientifically correct thing to do, but this is, having worked through this in an hour or so, these are now our predictions for Christmas toy sales. So, and on that note, I'll pass on to the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ross. Warren and I, over the last couple of weeks, have been talking about contextual analysis, because when we're talking to our clients are saying, well, describe to me the profile of my typical customer. And a couple of years ago I did some analysis for Diageo when you could do this sort of thing with the Facebook API. Sadly that's changed, and you could say something like Captain Morgan drinkers are fans of Ultimate Fighting, Pete Griffin from Family Guy, and Megan Fox. Am I missing something in terms of being able to use Sysomos tools to do that sort of analysis?
You are loosely, I mean, we can't tell you exactly what they're going to be talking about, but using some of the text analytics, you could perform searches around, for instance, Captain Morgan's, and then using, there's a sort of fairly unique piece of text analytics in there which would be highlighting the entities, so which are the proper nouns that people are discussing. Right. So whilst it's not going to be that they're absolutely a fan of Family Guy or something like that, if you can see large or trends of people discussing particular topics, then that could again be something which you could then investigate. So, I mean, you obviously know how our tools work, but you can dynamically change those searches again and again to look at relative volumes.
Yeah, I guess I was looking for a magic wand. Thank you very much, Ross.
Thank you.
Cheers.